In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, amen. Glad to see so many new faces among our regular class members. Your presence here proves that you appreciate the vital importance of these classes. But perhaps many of you do not know just how this Pray the Mass movement came into being and just what we hope to accomplish through our work. These classes were begun in order to give people a more intimate knowledge and a more loving understanding of the Mass by teaching them to pray the Mass with missals. It is of this national, if not worldwide, proportions, as did the perpetual novena in honor of our sorrowful mother, which began here in our midst, and of which this Pray the Mass movement is a result. It is principally through that we hope to reach our goal. That it is possible for a spiritual movement of this type to attain such success has been proven by the perpetual novena, which began in Our Lady of Sorrows Church
What is up, everybody? My name is Alex, and welcome to The Broth, the most fun show on the internet. We're here live in the Cauldron, and today we're going to have a chill stream, a little bit of a casual thing, but on some serious stuff. We're really going to stick with the tagline on today's stream. It's going to be fun, but we're going to talk about some serious stuff. But, you know, a little unstructured, a little loose. I got some clips to play for you guys. Started to get a little bit of feedback from the Little Season community. I wasn't planning on making this a Little Season show, but I think some of you will identify where, you know, once you start digging into this stuff, it's like pretty consuming. I was more going to talk about... a number of things that are sort of tangential: religion, history, politics, stuff like that. And there's so much going on with politics, but right now we're kind of into like lots of things happening, at least. So I'm an American, so I'm coming from that perspective, but like lots of stuff happening, but like, is it good? My hair is all crazy. Is it going to bear fruit? You know, does Trump work for us, or does he work for Satan and Israel? You know, so yeah, I'm just gonna put that on the back burner for now, but I will be talking about it. It will be kind of interesting to see how everybody vibes with the different stuff, because, you know, I know like if I was trying to build a big following, I should stick with one niche or something. But I just know myself, you know, I'm gonna be interested in different stuff. So. But yeah, I've gotten some feedback from a couple of people, and it's been great so far. Some people that are very skeptical of the Catholic stuff, which I expected and is totally understandable, but everybody's been respectful and everything, and I've had nothing but good interactions with people so far. You know, we're all coming at this from different backgrounds, and that's totally cool. You know, I have my perspective, I have my devotion to the church and my perspective on that. I understand a lot of people are coming from like very negative feelings of the church, and that's not going to change easily. So yeah, it's all good. You know, I mean, I think some of us have, we have spent a long time thinking, and I had, that the Catholic Church is one of the major culprits in the world in terms of big conspiracy stuff. And, you know, my view, my change of heart on that did not happen overnight. There we go. Happened over time. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess if I could presume to ask something of you guys, of this community, in terms of Catholic stuff, it would be this. There's a lot of anti-Catholic rhetoric out there that the mainstream, there's no need to dig underneath just the common Catholic understanding of the faith answers. So, like, it's an issue for all of us, I think, us conspiracy diggers, is that sometimes we spend so much time digging for the esoteric stuff that we don't know some of the basic stuff. And so, no shade in anybody. We're all just where we're at, and we're all just trying to understand what's going on and sharing thoughts and all of that. I'm going to say this, but and then I'll say, like, I still want to hear from you. I still want to hear your feedback. I want to hear your criticisms and anything that you think you disagree with or thinks that doesn't make sense. I'm open to a conversation, but there are things like the idea that Catholics worship statues that, like, very quick, very quick looking up. Well, what's the Catholic's response to that? Should be the end of that accusation, and I think out of charity for each other as brothers and sisters in Christ, that would be something that I would love to see. And I'm not talking about anyone in particular, and I don't mean to pick on you guys. This is something that I see all over the place, But yeah, we live in an age of the internet now, and I think some charity, I think some charity is in order. And I can be guilty of it too sometimes, in the way that I'll talk about, the Mormons or some Protestant group or whatever. But that's sort of the intro I want to give. Oh, but somebody messaged me. Well, I guess there's nothing to say in this yet, but I will say somebody messaged me that watched one of my videos. If you're watching this, so I just want to say I message you back. Someone that's been a Catholic for a long time, maybe lifelong, and is a little seasoner. I'm very excited to talk to other Catholics that are into this, particularly those who have remained in the faith. If you're out there, please reach out to me. I want to talk to you. So today I'm going to talk about the question of who are the enemies of Christ, and who are the preservers. I'm going to make myself a little bigger here. Now we're talking. And that's not to say that, there are things that are groups like the Freemasons where they're really part of a group that acts as one thing, but I think we all know sort of like the lower level people really don't know a lot of what's going on with this stuff. But in talking about a larger, broader group that involves a diversity of minds and perspectives, which you'll see what I mean soon. I'm not, we can talk about groups without meaning everybody, without meaning it's just some people. And I'm speaking with the Christian understanding that the line between good and evil runs through each of our hearts. My biggest battle is not against anyone else, but against the evil in my heart. It says in the Bible, our battle is not against flesh and blood, and all, demonic influence that can affect any of us. And also, there are people who give themselves fully to Satan, are in covenant with Satan. And that's a reality we should understand as well. But, most people, it's not that cut and dry. And those of us that are, fully committed to Christ, we still obviously err and sin. So what should we do first? By the way, this video I played at the beginning is the 1940s.
The winter of 1937.
Latin Mass from 1940. There's a little sermon.
As he looked forward to it.
beautiful stuff. One of the things I'm going to do in this show is, in today's show, is I'm going to show a couple radical truth tellers among clergy, Catholic clergy. And for those of you who aren't familiar with these guys, you may be surprised that it might change your perspective a little bit. Now, these two guys actually have both been persecuted by the church for being such radical truth tellers. So, in a sense, this these guys, there's a kind of a case for the church in them saying what they're saying and being who they are, and a case against because they are persecuted. But I will note that these guys who really risked everything in order to tell the truth about certain things have never once condemned the church. And I would challenge anyone to find somebody who loves Christ, who was a member of the clergy, who left and speaks bad about the Catholic Church as an institution, while not seeming to have some ulterior motive, which obviously is subjective, but we'll see, I'm just going to put that out there. Welcome whoever is joining right now. So this is something.
And yet extremists...
Okay, let me get this all lined up. At some point I'm going to get like a hotkey type of setup. What if I do that? Nope, didn't work. Yeah, that should be fine. All right, here we go. So we're just going to watch some different things. There's not a really, there's a theme here, but it's just going to spur some conversation or some monologuing, I guess. And I'm just going to say before I do this, I'm going to try to be careful here because I'm definitely walking on the edge of YouTube guidelines here. Even though it's all love, even though I'm half Ashkenazi for whatever that's worth to YouTube, probably nothing. I remember when they called Bernie Sanders, who's a Jewish guy, I remember they called him anti-Semitic for opposing the war in Iraq back in the day. But anyway, I just want to ask you to please follow me on Rumble because I'm not very good at being careful. And, there's a strong chance at some point I'm already banned off of Meta, I didn't do nothing but tell the truth, but it is what it is. So I'm on Rumble. It's Bone Broth Bro there also. And, check this out.
And yet extremists like the Weathermen, who took their name from a Bob Dylan song, many Americans saw in them the random violence and mindless destructiveness of a whole generation of self-centered youth.
I remember going to the last above-ground weather, it was the Weathermen or the Weather Underground, the last above-ground convention. And sitting in a room, and the question that was debated was it or was it not the duty of every good revolutionary to kill all newborn white babies? And at that point, it seemed like a relevant framing of an issue. The logic being, hey, look, through no fault of their own, these white kids are going to grow up to be part of an oppressive racial establishment internationally. And so really, your duty is to kill newborn white babies. And I remember one guy kind of tentatively and apologetically suggesting that
nobody is advocating for this in this video. I'm advocating against anything like this remotely. This gentleman's not advocating for it. He's talking about his experience.
That seemed like it may be contradictory to the larger humanitarian aims of the movement and being kind of booed down.
In 1970, 3 members of the Weathermen blew themselves up when a Greenwich Village townhouse they had converted to a bomb factory accidentally exploded. Clearly inept in their technical skills, muddled in their political message, these militants nonetheless received enough press coverage to make it appear they were an important threat. Though the townhouse explosion slowed them down, Weathermen survivors burrowed underground and carried on, eventually claiming responsibility for dozens of bombings.
You know what happened to one of these people? This is crazy. Susan Rosenberg. So we're going to Wikipedia here, right? This is not a conspiracy theory. Rosenberg was born to a middle-class Jewish family in Manhattan. Her father was a dentist, his mother a theatrical producer, blah, blah, blah. Rosenberg joined the May 19th Communist Organization, a female-led clandestine group working in support of the Black Liberation Army and its offshoots, including assistance in armored truck robberies, the Weather Underground, and other revolutionary organizations. So this being the organization that guy was just talking about, that was debating racially based murder of white people, white babies, charged in a role in bombing the U.S. Capitol. So this woman was part of the bombing of the U.S. Capitol. Here's how a bomb blew up. Now, what ended up happening to her? Oh, it was Clinton, that's right. On January 20th, 2001, the day he left office, President Bill Clinton commuted Evan and Rosenberg's sentences. So you're kind of seeing there's an alliance here, right? There's this lady's background, her ethnicity, the communists, people like Bill Clinton. And, just in our theme, who are the enemies? Who are the protectors? Who are the, how did I say it? The preservers of the kingdom of Christ and of Christianity, of the faith. Pretty wild stuff. That's getting real serious. We'll kind of gently get there. Well, no, there's not going to be anything gentle about anything. This is serious stuff. Let's take a look at this.
With, I think, Mike, maybe you're the best one for this. Maybe the background of Jews and the adult entertainment industry, either from the filmmaking perspective, management perspective, active perspective, viewing perspective. Share.
You sure this isn't one you want to take? I have some thoughts on it.
Here.
Jews in the adult industry, there's a lot of them. It was pretty much founded by the adult industry, or I'm sorry, the Jews. The adult, I had a couple of beers. The adult industry was pretty much founded by the Jews. Basically, in the early 1900s, the German Jewish immigrants came in, and when they were trying to get into different industries, there was a lot of anti-Semitism where they couldn't get into normal lines of work. I'm not saying that porn's not normal. So they gravitated towards the porn industry because it's like kind of the seedier cousin of the Hollywood industry, which had already been controlled by the Jews. And basically they pretty much just...
So they couldn't get into normal lines of work because of anti-Semitism, but they already ran Hollywood.
Took it over. If you look at the big stars... did I break my chair already?
I think so.
Okay, by people like Danny Mamet, Danny Skura, and then later in the 80s, the godfather of the modern day porn industry, his name was Reuben Sterman, who was actually an Orthodox Jew. He owned over 200 bookstores all around the country. He's actually my godfather, which is kind of weird. Reuben Sterman, what the Jews did pretty much was they revolutionized the adult industry and made it their own. So there was no space for anti-Semitism, and they basically controlled everything. So back in the 80s, the only way you could get pornography was to go through someone like Reuben Sterman, and he controlled, all of his stores and all the stores that that he didn't own. They actually had to pay him a tax to carry his
Being a
product. And
gangster.
he was the only place that you could get product from, peep shows from. And later, what the Jews did was they started the manufacturing end of the business. There were a lot of Italians that were coming into the business, but what they did was they created the manufacturing side, which is the replication, the printing, because
Now, if you say this, you'll, depending on what your job is, you lose your job. You could be defamed. You know, if my channel takes off, that's a risk for me. But here he is saying it. And he doesn't have, you know, he's not getting hung up on disclaimers. You know, it wasn't all of us or blah, blah, blah. It's just the so-and-sos.
back in the day, if you wanted to make a VHS or a beta tape or whatever, you couldn't go down to Kinko's or any mainstream printer and be like, I want to print, you know, Gang Bang My Mom #3. or something.
Yeah, no,
I promised I would.
yeah.
That works too. We haven't done that yet. But. So what they did was they created all of these companies that manufactured DVDs and VHS and beta and printing, and all the companies pretty much had to go through the Jews. Reuben Sterman, actually, eventually he died in prison. Not from, they tried to get him from obscenity back in the 80s, which was a big thing. And it actually still is. There was an obscenity arrest today. But
Yeah,
he
we should
eventually
bring that
died
back.
in prison because of tax evasion, because he didn't want to pay taxes.
Oh.
So, you know, it happened.
Yeah, Jews and
Yeah,
money.
yeah, Jews and money is the next time we talk. Coming next year.
Rabbi,
Buy your tickets today.
do you want to weigh in? So let's follow that up with the relationship between the Jews who got involved in this industry because they couldn't get involved in mainstream in
My jaw
Hollywood,
gets stuck.
and their relationship with non-Jews then who were in this industry. Was there stigma? Because while they did control a variety, you know, historically control a lot of this industry, was there a stigma about those who were actively, let's say, making the films about being Jewish in this movie? Was there a stigma within it? And was there a stigma from
As they're moving into this country and revolutionizing the filth industry and taking it over and running it like gangsters, was there any stigma? Were they maybe discriminated against
other Jews who were in the community?
by the hateful goyim who hate them for no reason?
And where is that at today versus historically?
Let me just answer that question with, back in the 70s, the majority of the male porn performers
There's going to be a part
were
that's really
Jewish,
shocking.
and the majority of the female performers were Roman Catholic.
This.
And if you look at the names from like the classic porn stars, you got Ron Jeremy, which isn't really Jewish, but you have Herschel Savage.
Is that his real name or his porn name?
That's a porn name.
Herschel was his porn name? That's not the one I would think.
But
That's the next question.
I-
Their porn names.
but it's kind of funny because those guys came into the industry, and I actually asked a couple of them, because I asked Ron Jeremy, and I was like, why did you guys, decide to go into the porn industry? Like, what was it that drew you? And besides, like, the obvious, they were like, I got to fuck Roman Catholic chicks. And fulfill every fan. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You're okay. Okay, you'll know.
Fornicate with Roman Catholic chicks. And fulfill, like, every fantasy that every Jewish boy has ever
Like,
had.
that's the
So,
bad part.
I think that the Jewish performers, they've always been really prevalent in the industry, and even now Ron Jeremy is.
All right. A buddy of mine told me that he's Catholic. He comes from a Catholic family, and that hearing this, I don't know if it was this video, but I don't know if other people have said that, really changed his views. And you could understand why. And there's a special place that Catholics have in the minds of this group of people. And I think it is notable. So that's that. Pretty gross. I think this is an example of how, maybe there's some, it's like anytime you criticize anybody in that group, it's like you just irrationally hate them for no reason. And there's not a reason to, well, I won't say there's not a reason to hate people. I think naturally people will hate people if you give them a reason. But as Christians, we're called to not, and to love everyone. And, the thing with that commandment is some people make it difficult. But I don't hate anybody. I think, I've said this before, I'll say this a lot. I think in many ways I'm a pretty mediocre Christian, but God did seem to give me a pretty loving heart. And I think he gave me that for a reason, to put me in this place of being, having half Ashkenazi background and half German background, and saying like, okay, grow up and try to find out who you are and what's the truth to you, or not to you, but what is the truth? What is God's truth? So, it gets worse. It gets worse.
It's the end of days. You're going to need the...
So we're not the only ones thinking about the end of the world and eschatology, and I think it's interesting. Let's think about what this guy says in terms of the questions that we have about what part of the Bible that we're in.
It's the end of days. You're going to need the iron of Esav, which represents Edom, which is the West, Europe, and the Americas, to get intermixed with Ishmael, which is basically...
I'm going to start at the beginning again, because I feel like he says something that I kind of missed.
It's the end of days. You're going to need...
It's the end of days?
It's the end of days.
I think he's saying it's the end of days, which suggests that he's not... they don't listen to what Christ said, but the end of days is Gog and Magog and final judgment, is it not?
You're going to need the iron of Esav, which represents Edom, which is the West, Europe, and the Americas, to get intermixed with Ishmael, which is basically Arabs and Muslims. How in the world was this ever going to happen if not for this refugee crisis? At the end of days, you're going to have this intermixing between Esav, Edom, which is the West, and the East, which is the Muslims and the...
Little internet hiccup there.
Then the indigenous people there, and they're going to sort of conquer by number. And there are many different sources for this, where there will be many, many people killed and so on and so forth. So the idea of having these refugees come into Europe, it's no longer a matter of whether it's right or wrong. It's just simply a fulfillment of what it was meant to be all along. This is the fulfillment of the Hazal and the prophecies. This has to happen, and this is just another sign that we are nearing, the completion of this tikkun of the entire world.
But we know one thing, right? That
The sequence of the entire world.
when it comes to the
obviously they're not going to believe in a millennial reign of Christ, but
classic Rome, which is Europe, they're finished.
And you don't have to be a prophet or a great analysis for that. You have to open the TV or the internet and see that exactly what was prophesied then, that the sons of Ishmael are going to go and cause havoc around the world. So France is completely barbecued. England is next. Now half of Europe is completely half dead. Now look what's going on in America. So, now in a country near you.
Asking what's going to be with the Goyim when Mashiach comes. Will they be destroyed and annihilated? Someone asked, who cares? Okay. As a nation, they'll cease to exist, even as individuals. Every individual, no survivors. Not only as a nation, they'll cease to exist, even as individuals. In modern terminology, they call it cultural genocide. They'll be annihilated.
What is this rocking back and forth? Yes, this is calling for our
You basically
genocide.
learn there's going to be cultural genocide. That, you know what, the Goyim as they exist as Goyim, b'fnei atzmam, that's done with. Batul u'mavutul.
Yeah, so if you're new to this, it's pretty shocking and disturbing. And this is part of my the thrust of what I'm trying to do here is to help people understand we need to be leaders. We need to be players. It is not Christian to allow your people to be destroyed. And there's a Christian way of handling it, and that involves loving and treating everyone with dignity. And but it does not involve letting your society, your people, be destroyed. It's pretty brutal stuff. And like I said, there are a diversity of views. Unfortunately, you don't see many people that belong to this religion or this ethnicity owning up to this or speaking up about it or fighting these people. If you call yourself a Catholic and you go around saying that about a group of people, you will get excommunicated. So, yeah. You know, I've been wrestling with this stuff for a long time, being having the background that I have. Let's do this one. This is a short one.
Some guys at MI6 to form Mossad. And for some reason, however it happened, James Angleton got allied with Mossad like this forever. He was the mole. If you remember, in 1960, he was the head CIA director of foreign intelligence, and he was the guy that always was looking for the Russian mole.
This has been validated recently. So it says John Olson Lear, former CIA player, says that Israel was behind the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And this was just bore out by the, well, not everything. There was not a smoking gun. But the person that this guy just mentioned, Lear, no, he's Lear. What was the
director of foreign intelligence, and he was the mole. If you James Angleton got
James
allied.
Angleton was in the released files, JFK files, talking about him and Israel's interests and saying things that suggested he put Israel's interests above the interests of the United States.
With Mossad like this forever. He was the mole. If you remember, in 1960, he was the head CIA director of foreign intelligence, and he was the guy that always was looking for the Russian mole. He was the Russian mole because, you know, he was so friends with Mossad, he'd tell Mossad stuff, and Mossad would pass it on to Russia. So when David Ben-Gurion, in the summer of 1963, said, you know, we have to kill Kennedy. We have to. I'm tired of him threatening us with inspecting Dimona. It's none of his friggin' business. I don't want to.
Dimona was the Israeli nuclear program,
hear anymore,
which has never been acknowledged. Everybody knows they have nukes, but they don't officially have them. And they stole they stole the technology from us.
Kennedy
through people like what he's talking about.
He gave that word to Mossad and then resigned so that he couldn't be held responsible for it. Mossad then went to Angleton. The Kennedy assassination was not a CIA job, but it was greased by the CIA only because Angleton was in there with his buddies at Mossad. And he's the one that greased the skids for everything that happened in Dealey Plaza and the escape and everything. There were Corsican sharpshooters there, hired by Mossad. They pulled off the whole thing, and everybody says, well, you know, they think the mob killed Kennedy, or maybe Johnson did, or Castro. It wasn't. It was Israel, and the reason they did is because David Ben-Gurion didn't want any more inspections of Dimona, and that's all.
And that's their nuclear. It's where they do their nuclear.
That's where they
get
their nuclear bombs with plutonium they stole from us, and some guys.
I wonder why JFK would have wanted Israel not to have nuke so much. Let's see, what is this? Samson option is Israel's deterrent strategy of massive retaliation with nuclear weapons as a, quote, last resort against a country whose military has invaded and or destroyed much of Israel. Commentators have also employed the term to refer to situations where non-nuclear blah, blah, blah. I want to see if I can see something a little more explicit about what this means. These are the same, like, Ben Shapiro will tell us, who cares who killed JFK? It was like 75 years ago. But then we're talking about Masada, which was, what, like 2,500 years ago? 2,200? Let's do a grok here. Samson option is a term. Is this going to talk for 9 years? That's way too much. Samson option is Israel's, this is too brief, alleged strategy of using, alleged, come on, it's totally not alleged. Okay, who would they nuke if they use the Samson option? Tell me about specific Israeli who have expressed what this means and what they said. And I need to say specific Israelis in positions of power. I guess it's alleged because they don't even confirm that they have nukes. Which, you know, if it was anybody else, it would make them a rogue nation. All right, David Ben-Gurion, he was prime minister from 48 to 54 and 55 to 63. Didn't mention explicitly. Saw the capability as ultimate guarantor against another, that thing. Here, this is what I was looking for. Martin van Creveld, military historian. Okay, he's not a politician. He's an Israeli historian. Prominent Israeli. But he's a prominent Israeli strategist. Has shaped discourse. In 2003, he claimed Israel could target, quote, most European capitals, like Rome, if abandoned by allies. Suggested a Samson option extending beyond the Middle East. Was used, though unofficial, reflects a radical interpretation. So I guess that's why, you know, maybe RFK, our only actual Catholic president ever, by the way, was willing to risk being killed to try to prevent them from stealing our nuclear secrets. All right, let's keep going. Here's Bishop Williamson. He had a big impact on me. I played a clip of him before in this stream. He passed fairly recently. He's going to tell you about what the new world religion is.
Where everybody is nice, everybody is sweet, and nobody has original sin. The only sin that's still left is Nazi sin. That's the new religion. The 6 million are the Redeemer, which means that the Jewish people are God. That's the religion today. And that's deadly, because you get Auschwitz instead of Golgotha, and the gas chamber instead of the cross. Can I blaspheme our Lord Jesus Christ? Does anybody worry? No problem. Blaspheme as much as you like. Can I blaspheme against the Holocaust by saying that there were no gas chambers? Horror, horror, horror. Burn him at the stake. He's a heretic. There you can see what is the real religion of the government today, politics today, and the masses, and it's not the Catholic
So that was realizing there were people in the Catholic Church and the clergy. He was a bishop that are willing to speak like that, the truth about the world that we live in. That was made a big impact on me. Now, I mentioned that he was persecuted by the church. It's very complicated. It's not as cut and dry as he was persecuted. I could do like several episodes just on what happened with him. But basically, in I think 1962, there is the Second Vatican Council. Now, when I say the Second Vatican Council, there was only one other like that in the last however many years since the founding of the Catholic Church, which you can come up with different numbers based on a variety of factors. And they did things like they introduced the Mass in the common vernacular of wherever they were, so it used to all just be the Latin Mass. This that I was playing earlier was.
Fire is a symbol of sacrifice.
So there's somebody narrating, but all sung in the High Mass, all in Latin. They're facing the altar instead of facing the people. And Vatican II, they created what's called the Novus Ordo Mass. What's up, Chunky? And that was, in the language of the people, and they made some changes that some people find controversial, but the goal was maybe to make it more accessible. And there was a group that didn't like this, and they named themselves after Pope Pius X. And if anybody is, was it the 12th? No, it was the 10th. That was the one that they named it after. SSPX, Society of Pope Pius X. Guys like this are a good argument for that the church has been infiltrated, but it's taken time, and that the church was really preserving the old school Christian values, being a bulwark against modernism and all this satanic stuff that we see today. So a group was created called SSPX, Society of Pope Pius X, and they were fine. They were just like a group within the church. There was no issues. And then there started to be issues, and they were told, you don't ordain any bishops. And there's two sides to the story, but basically the idea was that the group felt that they were in their rights to still do that, and the Vatican either felt at the time that they weren't, or came to that conclusion later. I'm not totally sure. And Bishop Williamson was one of the bishops that was ordained in that way. Now, stuff like this gets complicated because this is a sacrament. Becoming a bishop is a sacramental thing. And so it's not just clear that you can invalidate something like that. I don't know that much about, beyond that. But that was that's how he became. He was already a priest and everything, of course. And so his sort of existence as a bishop was controversial from the beginning. And he ended up kind of leaving SSPX. And he was, when he passed, he was still within the church, I believe. But it was a little bit contentious. So like I said, in some respects, having people like this in the church is a huge argument for the Catholic Church being, you know, totally against this demonic world order that we live in. But you could say that, you know, the fact that it was so difficult for him would count against him, but that supports the theory of sort of infiltration, not core rot or something like that. So anyway, that's Bishop Williamson. I got a couple other clips of him. I played him before. Again, I'll highly recommend. I'll put it in the comments. Chunky, have you seen this 1996 lecture series? Because it is so good.
Even a bit better than we do. So really, what's wrong with these fellas? They're just like us. We're just like them. We're all one great slushy happy party. That's the slide from the fact to... And the problem, and the popes complained about the Peace of Westphalia. They said, watch out, watch out. If you let this, all right, maybe a standstill of the weapons was necessary, but make sure that it doesn't slide into an acceptance of what the Protestants are and what they stand for. Because if you go from if you let it slide from the fact of their existing to acknowledging the right of them to exist.
Bro, you'll love this, man. I'll grab another part. So it's 15 videos, average of about an hour, and then they've got some more Bishop Williams stuff, a whole excellent playlist here. Yeah, like he explains how the Catholic perspective and modernism, which is the philosophy that Satan has been pushing in this time, are incompatible. It's like oil and water. And the problems we're seeing with the Catholic Church, from the laity up to the clergy, is that we're trying to mix these things together, and how it does not work. I wonder if I can... Here, let's try... see if just some shorter clips come up. This literally was one of the things that influenced me the most to be a Catholic. What did I pull up? Loss of sovereignty. That one we watched. And let's do that one.
A Catholic king is essentially obedient to the church, or obedient to the law of God. One king under God. One monarchy under God.
Does that sound like could be talking about the millennial reign?
One nation under God. That's Catholic. I mean, that's a Catholic way of thinking. Each establishment that's formed itself away from the Catholic Church without resting upon the Catholic Church, it's flawed. It's got cracks in it. Men are conscious that there's something wrong, and the revolutionaries drive the wedge in and say, this is wrong. The people say, well, yes, it is wrong. What you need to do is drive another stage down. Well, yes, what we need to do then is to drive another stage down. They follow the revolutionaries one after another on the way down. It's flawed. There's cracks in it. The socialists say, you're a bunch of fat cats, which is what the assassins of Lincoln were. Lincoln was in their way, and they killed him at the end of the Civil War. The new establishment is the welfare state. We are now right in the middle of the welfare state, Medicare, social aid, and so on. They are now in the process of breaking down the American nation, breaking down American sovereignty. in order to bring in the New World Order. American heavy industry has gone to the Asian countries. All American business is being shipped over the frontiers. America is being broken down in order that it will be able to be fitted into the New World Order. And the media are constantly telling us that this breakdown of American sovereignty is a wonderful thing. They try to introduce...
This is 1996.
Into American schools a few years ago, a history program which practically leave out George Washington. The real builders of the United States are the most ignoble people will become the heroes of the new American history. They're going to rewrite American history in order to break down the
How prescient is that?
nations and create an international world order. And it's completely logical. The whole thing is completely logical. What we need is religion. What you need is a Messiah. And men will be enslaved to the very opposite of Christ. The Catholic Church works by conversion. Revolution is an instrument of the devil. All authority is from God, and the authorities that are in position come from God. And that's why Catholics must obey the authorities. Revolution is not the Catholic way. St. Paul doesn't say, slaves, rise up and make a revolt and kill the wretches, and you have a right and they're trampling on your rights. St. Paul doesn't say any of the kind. St. Paul says, slaves, obey your masters. Even if they're nasty, obey your masters as though you're obeying Jesus Christ, and you will be rewarded in heaven for obeying a nasty master. That's what St. Paul says. That's the Catholic way. Eventually, slavery just fell to pieces because everybody was Catholic in thinking and in mind. When everybody's Catholic, they know perfectly well that they all come in front of the same judgment seat of God. Whereas now, in our revolutionary society, where everybody screams about being free, they're wage slaves and mortgage slaves and punch clock slaves. They're slaves of their salary, or slaves of their paymaster, and slaves of their mortgage. And you get.
Have you ever heard clergymen, like a pastor or anything, talk like this? When I saw this, I was still kind of in the mindset of maybe the church was on the side of the devil, and then I saw this, I was like, this is the truth. This guy's speaking absolute. I mean, I don't have to agree with him on every little point, but like, here's a man unencumbered by fear to speak the truth, and he is nailing it,
Get all of these poor people driving, as glum as death, driving in and out of their ticky-tacky little office, trying to pay off this 30-year mortgage by which they've been enslaved on their homes. And these people call themselves free, and they're proud of their liberty. They haven't got liberty in any real sense.
Boom.
That's another thing that modern people don't do. They don't read and they don't think. And even Catholics don't read and don't think. Or they don't think and read anything like enough. There's no way today, given the paralysis of the churchmen, there's no way that a Catholic today can keep his faith straight without reading. He's got to read. And he may or may not have a priest to guide him in his reading, because there are plenty of priests that have no idea what needs to be read. They don't themselves read, and they don't know what to recommend. So you may or may not, if you've got a priest who can guide you in reading, that's excellent. But you must read. And you must read for yourselves. For instance, the Archbishop of Lefebvre is excommunicated, Archbishop of Lefebvre is suspended. All the media say so. All of the priests and bishops say so. How can you possibly think the opposite? Answer, you've got to look at the evidence for yourself. You've got to go into it for yourself. You've got to study. You've got to read, and you've got to think. Because that doesn't make sense. That does make sense. Well, what conclusion do I draw? And you've got to put 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 together. It's not 2 and 2 makes 4. It's 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 makes 8. I mean, you've got to do, and then you've got to keep reading. Because the vile media and the abject churchmen and these poor idiot priests and bishops, they keep coming back with the same idiocies. And you've got to keep washing it out. You've got to keep thinking. You've got to keep reading. It's a demanding situation. You might say, well, God never made the laymen to think for themselves. I'm afraid that's not true. Even 50 years ago, laymen still had to think that the Catholic being a Catholic was the smart thing to be. And they're right, it's always the smart thing to be. But every time a Catholic woke up, even 50 years ago, he wasn't automatically a Catholic. He could easily lose the faith and choose to lose the faith, and the proof is how many did choose to lose the faith. Nobody obliged you to.
I kind of want to find a better clip, but I feel like he's going to start spitting fire any second.
Doesn't encourage. I don't think you will find that society priests encourage the laity to follow blindly. I don't think they do. On the contrary, the priests generally tell you to work it out for yourself, because if you work it out for yourself, that's the best way you can stick with the truth.
Does that sound like an institution that wants to fool you? I don't think so. Let's see if we got any more shorter clips. I do have another couple clips queued up on X. I mean, let's see what he can do in 12 seconds.
And therefore, when some sweet, soft, mushy-minded liberal says to you, oh, but the existence of God is a question of faith. No, it is not.
Let's go. Let's go. That's absolutely right. I feel like this question in a minute is crazy. Yeah. Wagner's Classic Answers. Or, oh, this one. Nice. Yeah, I thought you were talking about this guy because I recognize him. He's got some good stuff too. I watched this interview.
Okay. The Ancient One.
I watched like almost maybe everything on YouTube that's Bishop Williamson over the last few years.
It says, why did God allow the Axis powers to lose the war?
Basically because Hitler was a pagan. Would be my flash answer and my swift answer. He was a great German patriot, but he was a pagan. In other words, he refused Jesus Christ and he refused the Catholic Church. And that was very unwise. He was a brilliant politician in many ways, but he had the wrong goals. And he did not put God in his right place, and that was fatal. And therefore Germany was smashed. Franco defended God, defended the Catholic cause, and therefore God gave him victory over the communists, one of the very rare victories in modern times over communism, over the advance of communism. Mussolini half looked after God, half did not look after God, and he half got smashed. Hitler defied God big time and got completely smashed.
Yeah. It's a whole topic of like, what were the real lines between the Axis and the Allies? You know, what did each side represent? And I laid this out some in the previous video of that the fascists were attempting to reclaim the sovereignty and the strength of the old world order, the Catholic monarchs, the Christian monarchs. And yeah, I basically agree with him. I wouldn't go so far as to call the German chancellor a pagan, but I do certainly Franco put God in the right place, and definitely said something that he was the only one to really survive. He ruled for a long time after that. And people, if you don't know, Franco gets cast as a villain. He absolutely was not. He defeated the communists. He was a soldier fighting the communists. Now, I don't care what you think about the Catholic Church. The communists were digging up the graves of nuns. They were killing priests and dragging them through their bodies through the streets. They were as savage as it gets. And yeah, I mean, I think you really see that. This is like Old Testament wisdom that the leaders, if the leader puts God in the right place, God will bless them and their whole nation. And if the leaders don't, they don't. And you know, that's relevant today for sure. All right, so let's stop that there. Let's go back. Chunky, I found this, I was playing this at the beginning, like just the opening. This is a 1940 Latin Mass video. Chunky says W, natural theology. I love old footage. Old footage plus Latin Mass coming in. All right, here's another Williamson.
Yamascudo says, when the Catholic Church gets its first black pope, we can finally put it into the dustbin of history, he says, where it belongs, along with all other reality-denying, egalitarian religions. He says, what do you think of that?
We have a, what do you call it? We have a Nietzschean, folks.
I've been saying the Catholic Church is not egalitarian. Like the rose is not equal to the daisy. God creates inequality in his. The Catholic Church is not for equality between man and woman. Before God, yes. In the eyes of God, yes. But in this life, in the family, no. The man is meant to be the head, and the woman is meant to be the heart. The woman has qualities of heart. The man has qualities of head. It's not as though no woman has any qualities of head, but they're not meant to use their heads. They're not meant to be in power. Your example from Sweden of the 7-hour prime minister is classic. God loved her. She wasn't fit, and she knew it, and she said it. God loved her. Much better than poor Mrs. what's her name, May here in Westminster, Maybot. The May robot, Mrs. May robot, poor Theresa May. She was not much more fit than the gal in Sweden, but she stuck to it because she wanted to prove that, amongst other things, that women are just as good as men. I think that's what she wanted to prove, most likely. That's what most of the women are taught to want to prove. We are as good as the men. In fact, we are better than the men. The purpose of our lives is to compete with the men and prove that we are better and push them down. That's a recipe for the absolute destruction of the family.
Now, him being outspoken in the way that he was controversial in the Catholic Church today in this modern era, and he's still a controversial figure. In the late 1800s, nothing that he is saying would be controversial at all, either in the church or, and for the most part, not outside of it either.
The wise woman.
So who's preserving?
The wise husband loves his
wisdom.
wife. That's again what Scripture says. St. Paul says, husbands, love your wives. Wives, respect you. Wives, obey your husbands. Oh, wives, obey your husbands. Unfortunately, the problem is that many husbands today are not fit to be obeyed. St. Paul also says, one God, two Christ, three man, four woman. So the woman is meant to be under the man as the man is meant to be under Christ. If the men would get back on their knees and get back under Christ, the women would be much more inclined to get back under the men and remake families where she can deploy all her gifts of heart under the headship of her husband. He holds the arena for her to deploy her love for him and for the children. And the best thing a man can do for his children is love their mother.
Are you ready for the future of the West?
Boom. You know, it's like, well, if Satan has infiltrated the church, Satan has infiltrated the church. If Satan replaced the church or took over the church or was, conducting operations from the church, exactly what has been, he didn't do a very good job of substituting anything or changing anything from the traditional view. You know, the traditional view that Bishop Williamson is espousing here is the antithesis of the satanic worldview that is we're all trying, they're trying to brainwash us all with. Okay, so now we have Vigano. We got to talk about Vigano. Now, like I said, this guy got in trouble. This guy got in big trouble. He got excommunicated. Now, while I agree, so Vigano is a truth speaker, but he didn't get excommunicated for speaking the truth, though. That's something that a lot of people don't understand. And I'll show you. So he's speaking the truth on stuff like this. And this also is a influence on me becoming a Catholic, because in 2020, it was like nobody with any authority was speaking on behalf of like me, all the stuff that I was seeing. And here we had an archbishop speaking out about it, and he wrote a letter to the Pope and everything. And the problem, though, is he started denying the legitimacy of Pope Francis. Now, you get into some kind of difficult Vigano, like he knows stuff. Yeah, for sure. It gets a little hairy because there have been anti-popes before. An anti-pope just means someone who's claiming to be pope who's not legitimately the pope. But usually how that happens, like the way that used to happen sometimes can't happen anymore. And I don't know, I don't know 100% on that, if this history, how accurate it is. But there's documentation about early times in the church when something would happen along the lines of this. There's no telecommunications. There's a pope. Not that many people, like the laity, oftentimes didn't know much of anything about the pope back in the day, and there would be somebody who would get sponsored by like a king or a banker who was corrupt and had their own ideas of what they wanted to do. And they would say, somebody else would say, I'm the Pope. And this, the banker or king or both would support that. And they would distribute stuff that made it seem like this was true. And so then that person could appear to be Pope for like years sometimes before it was figured out. Now, the Catholic view is always like there are power struggles up in the church sometimes because we're all human beings. And as lay people, so some people decide on their own authority, this Pope is not legitimate, I'm out of here. And that's not the Catholic way of doing things, because you're supposed to have faith in the gates of hell will not prevail. Vigano, I don't really know what the precedent would be or what his spiritually the expectation would be of him, because he's not the laity. I would think, though, that what he was not supposed to do that he did would be to go public with his accusations that Pope Francis was not legitimate. And what's up, Friendly? Welcome, buddy. He only discusses the 5 opinions because he asks what would happen supposing the Pope would become a heretic. Additionally, Vatican I passes over the question of a possible Pope becoming a heretic. Well, yeah, another layer to this is there's a prophecy, and I got to do a video on Marian prophecies, because this is just something that, the people outside the Catholic Church are depriving themselves the benefit of these miracles and prophecies. And there's miracles that are well documented, and there's prophecies which have come true. So, that suggests also that there's something special about the Catholic Church, that these things are happening. Catholics are there. They're getting reported to the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is looking them over and either validating them or invalidating them, depending on, they'll do years-long investigations. It's freaking amazing, man. I love the Catholic Church so much. No problem, Friendly. Thanks for coming, man. So, yeah, Vigano, I don't know that much about it, and I don't need to. I'm a lay person. I can just go to church and, that sort of thing. But my understanding is that Vigano maybe got a little carried away and he stepped over the line and he did something that is traditionally an excommunicable offense, and that the Pope didn't do anything, didn't punish him, didn't tell him to shut up or anything. I'm sure people consulted with him like, hey man, be careful, until that he stepped over that line, and then he just did what would normally be done. So I don't know. I love the Pope and I love Vigano, and I don't know, I don't know what happens from here. But what I will say is that this man is a man of deep faith who loves the church. Here he is. And who, in spite of his issues with Francis, with some of the stuff that he was seeing, that we all were seeing, speaking out about this stuff right here, he has never said a bad word about the Catholic Church as an institution, about the faith. It's definitely not the faith. And so I think that is a powerful testament. So let's see what he has to say here.
A few weeks ago, an important collaborator of Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, was arrested for pedophilia and child pornography. I'm referring to Slade Summer, a man with ties to the world of Broadway and cinema, who play a role in the effort to debunk the infamous Pizzagate affair. That is...
How crazy is that? So the Pizzagate thing goes viral. We're told, this is a crazy conspiracy theorist. There's a journalist who is one of the main people in quote-unquote debunking it. He ends up getting arrested and put in prison for pedophilia. Then make it even crazier, here is an archbishop saying what the news won't tell you.
The network, filthy complicity and horrendous crimes against minors that revolve...
Oh yeah, Chunky, you remind me, though, common view and the most reasonable view is that the Pope will never become a heretic. Yeah, well, we know that the Pope can't be a heretic in any papal decree. So, like, from his official capacity as in the seat of St. Peter, because God is protecting the faith from being changed. And you might be right that it goes further than that God will protect heresy from ever, kind of crossing the lips of an active pope. That could be true. What is I gotta go into Grok here. There is a miracle with Mary, and there's a prophecy, and it involves the prediction of a great apostasy of the Catholic Church coming from the top. And there's like 4 parts to it or something, 3 or 4 or 5. And there's a last one that the Vatican has not released to the people. It's fascinating. Let's see, what is the Marian prophecy that speaks of an apostasy Catholic Church coming from Early of La Salette? Is that what it is? Yeah, I feel like it's Fatima. Yeah, it's Fatima. Thinking of Fatima. There are a few sections or seeds, and all but one have been shared with the public. You're saying the Pope can't in any capacity be a heretic. I mean, that's very possible. Okay, it's the secrets. First secret of Fatima. So Lucia was a woman. She had visions, and these have been recognized by the Catholic Church. She had, the first one, she had a vision of hell, where the children saw souls suffering in flames, tormented by demons. So wait, Fatima, that's the same one with the miracle of the sun. Right, that's right. Okay, it's coming together for me. So Fatima, this is in Portugal, and in the 40s, and the country is suffering, and these three kids have a vision of an angel at first, and the angel speaks to them and says, come to this spot at once a month and at the same time. And they come back the next month and they have a vision of Mary, but they don't know who she is. They're little kids. And they keep coming back for months, and they keep having visions of Mary. And eventually the town finds out, and they all accuse these kids of being liars. And like the mayor gets involved, and the priest gets involved, and they're all like really trying to get these kids to admit that they're lying, but the kids will not do it despite crazy pressure from their parents and everything. And then more people, faithful people, start hearing about these kids that are having visions of Mary, and they start gathering and watching the kids. And in front of all these people, the kids are talking to Mary. There's a beautiful movie about it called Our Lady of Fatima, I believe. And then it culminates in the last one. Now the word has gotten out. Thousands of people show up. The press is there. And there's the miracle of the sun. The sun makes a spiral in the sky and moves around in a way that's absolutely impossible if the sun is built. I mean, God could do it anyway, but it doesn't make any sense if the sun is a giant ball of gas millions of miles away. And this was recorded on camera. Let me bring this up because this is just absolutely like... And then the Protestants just ignore this, or they like ridicule stuff like this. But this is God acting in the world today.
In the spring of 1917, in the countryside of Fatima, Portugal, the Blessed Virgin Mary first started appearing to 3 young shepherd kids. Appeared as a...
That's a real photo. He's just going to tell the same story I'm telling, so I'm not going to play that. But I didn't even mean to make this on YouTube. This is how many people were there. This is how many people witnessed this. That's the sun in a this is a miracle. Tons of non-believers were there. Almost all of them became believers. 70,000 people. If your church isn't telling you about this, There's a colorized photo. It's beautiful. Is there video? It's just going to give me tons of videos of people explaining it. Yeah, I don't know if they had video cameras. I should try to find that sometime for the show. But okay, so meanwhile, there's these 3 kids, right? There's 3 kids that are getting visited, and the oldest one is a girl. And one of the things that Mary says to them is that 2 of them are going to die young. And the third one, I think, she doesn't tell her what is going to happen. Sure enough, the 2 kids die young. If they get sick and die. And the third one becomes a monk, and she lives from being 10 years old in 1941. She lives until like the 90s. She becomes an old woman. And there were things that Mary said to them that she was the only one that remembered. that she was instructed about what to do with the information that she was told. And these are the 3 secrets. Now, yeah, let's see what this tells us. And I'm curious what the Salette one is, because I don't know about that one. First secret, revealed in 1941 in Lucia's memoirs. That was the older girl. This was a vision of hell where the children saw souls suffering in flames tormented by demons. Our Lady emphasized the need for prayer and sacrifice to save souls from this fate, particularly through the devotion of her Immaculate Heart. And this is stuff where, like, Protestants just lose their minds for no reason. Second secret, also shared in 1941, this part included a warning about World War II. So it was predicting World War II. And the spread of Russia's, quote, errors, interpreted as communism, if humanity did not repent and consecrate Russia to Mary's Immaculate Heart. It predicted further conflict and suffering, but the promise that, quote, in the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph, a period of peace would follow. Some people think that this is actually happening now because we had the Cold War for many years, that then with Putin and the fall of the Soviets, they have been building tens of thousands of churches and perhaps making peace with America soon, hopefully, could bring that period of peace. The third secret is likely the one you're thinking of, as it was kept secret by the Vatican until June 26, 2000. So the question is if they released all of it. When it was officially released under Pope John Paul II, common Pope John Paul W., this third secret was described a vision of a, quote, bishop dressed in white, often interpreted as a pope, who, while climbing a mountain amid a ruined city filled with corpses, is killed by soldiers, with bullets and arrows, alongside other bishops, priests, and lay people. The vision ends with angels collecting the martyr's blood under the cross. So now we get into speculation. Oh yeah, this is kind of coming back to me. Let's see what you guys say. Chunky and Friendly here is goated, no doubt. We got the dream team. When the Vatican released the third secret in 2000, it was accompanied by an interpretation from then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who became the next pope, who described it as a symbolic representation of the Church's 20th century struggles, including persecution under atheistic regimes like communism. It's another thing, if not only, I said yesterday, if Catholicism, if the Catholic Church is bad, what's the point of infiltrating it for communists and and Freemasons? Also, why are the communists banning the Catholic Church in Mexico for years and killing priests? And they have to, as if it's the mid-first century, they have to do mass in caves. Did they ban other churches? He suggested the vision reflected events like the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II in 1981 rather than a future catastrophe. However, before its release, and even after, many Catholics speculated that the third secret contained a prophecy about an apostasy. Oh, this is speculation? I thought that was known. Or an internal crisis within the church, although this is grok, so it could be not totally on. Lucia's later writings. In letters and statements attributed to Sister Lucia, though some are debated for authenticity, so, we had snakes in the bed here. She reportedly spoke of a, quote, diabolical disorientation affecting the church and the world, which some interpret as a spiritual crisis involving church leadership. I mean, I would say when you have German bishops promoting LGBT stuff, that could be what it's talking about. Groups like the Fatima Center and some traditionalist Catholics have argued that the full third secret wasn't disclosed. Okay, so, all right. We're speculating a bit much for my taste here. And if it's a little too much speculation for my taste, that says a lot. Ta-da. Okay, so anyway, how the heck did I get on that? What are we even talking about? We're talking about Archbishop. All right, back to Vigano.
Against minors that revolves around the international deep state. We have learned that certainly Jeffrey Epstein and most likely Ghislaine Maxwell were members of the Israeli Mossad. This makes us understand that the famous trips of many well-known people to Epstein Island were used to blackmail them by collecting evidence of their guilt in participating in heinous ritual crimes against minors. And if the heads of state...
I love this Jesus behind him. He looks like half Japanese or
and
something.
governance officials of the Western world do not dare to breathe out a word of protest against the massacres of civilians in Gaza Strip, it is legitimate to assume that this attitude is due to the intensive dossier with videos inculpating them that are in possession of the Israeli intelligence services.
God bless, Junkie.
The same thing must be happening with the preparation of the fake pandemic emergency, which was lavishly replicated in all the member states of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations, and also with the farce of the Ukrainian crisis. But this blackmail of the powerful of the world
based in red pill.
constituted the unifying
Yeah. Had his problems, but never talked bad about the church. Not one time. Here he is again, just straight spitting.
Those who do not adapt to this fourth industrial revolution will find themselves ousted and will lose. They will lose everything, including their freedom. In short, Klaus Schwab is threatening the head of government of the 20 most industrialized nations in the world to carry out the programmatic points of the Great Reset in their nation. This goes far beyond the pandemic. It is a global coup d'etat against which it is essential that people rise up and that the still healthy organ of state start an international juridical process. The threat is imminent and serious. Since the World Economic Forum is capable of carrying out its subversive project, and those who govern nations have all become either enslaved or blackmailed by this international mafia. In the light of these statements, and those of others no less delusional than Yuval Noah Harari, Schwab's advisor, we understand how the pandemic
Yuval Harari mentioned, I should put it, play a couple videos of
serve
him.
as a trial balloon for imposing controls, coercive measures, curtailing individual freedoms, and increasing unemployment and poverty. The new step will have to be carried out by means of economic and energy crisis, which are instrumental to the establishment of a synarchic government in the hands of the global elite.
Here we go.
You have a small elite that pushes things in its own interests, even if it doesn't benefit the vast majority of the population. This has happened so many times previously in history, and it's probably going to happen again. One of the biggest dangers to the planet today is this technological utopia, because probably for the elite it will work. If bad comes to worst, and when the flood comes, the scientists will build a Noah's Ark for the elite, leaving the rest to drown, the rest of the people and the rest of the ecosystem. But they are likely to be able to construct this technological Noah's Ark, which is probably what much of the elite is counting on. You have a small...
So there it kind of sounds like he thinks this is a problem, but then wait till you hear some other stuff he says.
COVID is critical because this is what convinces people to accept, to legitimize total biometric surveillance. If we want to stop this epidemic, we need not just to monitor people, we need to monitor what's happening under their skin. What we have seen so far, it's corporations and governments collecting data about where we go, who we meet, what movies we watch. The next phase is the surveillance going under our skin. We're now seeing mass surveillance systems established even in democratic countries, which previously rejected them. And we also see a change in the nature of surveillance. Previously, surveillance was mainly above the skin. Now it's going under the skin. Governments want to know not just where we go or who we meet. Above all, they want to know what is happening under our skin. What's our body temperature? What's our blood pressure? What is our medical condition? Now humans are developing even bigger powers than ever before. We are really acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction. We are really upgrading humans into gods. We are acquiring, for instance, the power to re-engineer life. I know that in recent years, we saw populist politicians undermining deliberately the trust that people have in important institutions like universities, like respectable media outlets. These populist politicians told people that, say, scientists are this small elite, disconnected from the real people. I mean, all this story about Jesus rising from the dead and being the Son of God, this is fake news. Humans are now hackable animals. You know, the whole idea that humans have, you know, this, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will, that's over.
Yeah. Yeah, people really, it's so evil that people will convince themselves that this is what he's doing is warning people and thinking it's bad, but he works with the people that are trying to make this stuff happen. And sometimes he's explicit about his desires more so than that. All right, what else do we got? I'm going to do a few more here and then wrap up. We did that. One more Vegano.
Dear friends, praise be Jesus Christ. Allow me to address you, first of all, to thank you for the witness you are giving to your fellow Americans. The awakening of consciousness is the first step towards liberation from the subversive leadership that has usurped the high places in both national and international institutions. Because opening one's eyes and looking at reality is essential if you are to understand what is really happening, denounce the globalist coup d'etat, and regain the national sovereignty and fundamental freedoms that have been taken away from you. You have all witnessed in recent years a radical change in society, a change planned by people without any electoral mandate and imposed by sold-out rulers. The United States of America, like many other nations, hostage to the Agenda 2030, is facing a very serious crisis. Inflation, and out of...
Say what you want about Trump, but Agenda 2030 is over. Ain't none of that stuff going to happen. Not by then, anyway. And they seemed very concerned that it happened by that time period for some reason. Maybe it has to do with our season theory. Maybe the season's coming to an end here. You know, I listened to a lot of lately of Understanding Conspiracy, Paul over there, as I have shared, and he's done a great job of laying out and describing like what Satan's plan would be to convince people to fight the camp of the saints, as is in Scripture. And you know, it is in Scripture, so we know it's going to happen in some way. He lays out a very grim view, you know, that leaves little hope for many of us. I don't think it's going to be just the few, however many it is, 1,000 people who refuse to fight against the camp of saints. I think it's going to be a lot more of us than that. And I think that, you know, and this is me speculating, but I think that good men can do things, can be heroes, you know, even men who don't totally know what's going on. I mean, none of us fully know what's going on. But in terms of Agenda 2030, like, you know, Satan is planning on winning, which he knows he can't do, but he's pursuing a plan that involves getting as close to a victory as possible and winning as many souls as possible. God is not going to, I don't think God is asking us to let Satan push it as far as, you know, metaphysically possible here. And so, you know, I think it's kind of an exciting time to be alive here, where we can be a part of the, we can help throw a wrench in the gears of Satan's plans here, and save a lot more souls than potentially normally people could, right? I'm just a bartender with a YouTube channel, and I can reach potentially millions of people, and in a critical time like this, you know, I can't do anything, but God can work through us, and there's a lot of potential for saving souls here and shining the light of truth. I missed the context of who is mentioning Yuval as almost sensible and cautious by comparison. Who compared to who?
Control self-induced migration crisis, human trafficking and child trafficking, rampant crime, and the weakening of law enforcement. The liberalization of crime and impunity, social degradation everywhere. New drugs that ruin the people who take them. The aberration of woke ideology. The LGBTQ+ agenda imposed in schools discriminations against whites. And there is still more. The war against President Donald Trump, the electoral fraud in the presidential election, the Great Reset Plan that seems to be proceeding smoothly,
not no more,
and the bottomless pit of funding and military aid that takes to prolong the conflict in Ukraine, thereby covering up the crimes of the Biden family.
Yeah, so this guy, I mean, I think very similarly to Vigano on this stuff. All right, here's a good one.
She throws him out. What can he do? Because the courts all back the mum. There's no way in which the courts are going to back dad. It's suicide for a nation. Such disintegration, such almost planned disintegration. There are people that want this. The Jews and the Freemasons want this. They want to break down the Western nations. They want to break down the morals and the standards and the life of the white males. They hate the white males most because the white males were responsible for this way of life. They built it up, led by the church, led by the Catholic faith. The Jews got into through Freemasonry, they got into the church big time with Vatican II. The church is broken down. What is there still to defend and protect the white Catholic male? And so the males have collapsed. And then the blacks turn on the whites because the whites are no longer defending what they should be defending, standing for what they should be standing for. The women turn on the men because the men are no longer standing for what they should be standing for. And there's another one, black. So hence this tremendous hatred of the whites, scorn of whites, and the scorn of the Jews turned on the Gentiles. There was a time when the Gentiles had the Jews under control and for their own good kept them in ghettos or helped them to look after themselves, because the Jews wanted the ghettos, not the Jews wanted the ghettos because they wanted to be on their own. Okay, said the whites at that time, you live in your ghettos and you stay in your ghettos, and we will oblige you to listen to a sermon on Sunday. That's the Jews in Rome. They were obliged. They had to send representatives to listen to a Catholic sermon. The whites oppressed the Jews for their own good. Now the Jews are oppressing everybody for their own triumph. But their own triumph will be their hell, obviously.
Hello, Base Department. This is why, Friendly, at the beginning of this, I implored everybody to follow me on Rumble. Because I don't know how long I'm going to last on here on YouTube. Here's E. Michael Jones. Mixed feelings about this fellow. I mean, I love him. I have some depart with him on a specific topic. But he had I love him forever. He had a big influence on me becoming Catholic also. Let's check this out. Friendly, have you watched this? He was just on Fight Back, Jake Shields' show.
So what's the Marshall Plan? The first thing that we're going to do is reform the currency. So they bring in, because they were using cigarettes as money at this point, right after the war. So we'll reform the currency, we'll give them a sound mark based on the dollar, and suddenly the Germans have money. At that moment, that very moment, 50,000 tons of pornography enter Germany.
That's when they flooded it with pornography.
They flood the country with pornography. This is the new plan, okay? Now, the old plan, that's too crude. This is as well. So what's the Marshall Plan? The first thing that we go...
You start kind of forming an understanding of who is targeted and by who. Who's the enemy and who's preserving. Yeah, this is brand new. This is like from a few days ago. I haven't watched it yet. It should be fun though. He's talking about pornography in Germany as a weapon. Now let's watch the same people using it before. And I started this out. The first clip I showed was a pornographer from the same group of people talking about how they revolutionized and totally took over the whole industry.
Well, they use porn and for warfare in Gaza. They'll flood it on their TVs against their will.
That's right.
Not Gaza, West Bank.
That's right.
That's demonic. Who's going to flood children and stuff with porn? That's just such demonic people.
Well, what it proves is that pornography is not free speech. It's warfare. Pornography is psychological warfare.
I think it needs to be pulled off online at least. I think maybe if it was hard to get, it wouldn't be such a problem. But kids having unlimited access to it, that's a problem. Well, they use porn and for war.
Yep. Alrighty. Well, that's my show for today. We'll end on a little bit of a Latin Mass cleanser for us here. God is great, God is in control, but He works through us. love everyone. We can love our neighbor and our enemy and protect the good and fight for the good. And God has always needed people to fight. I'm going to say one more thing before I get out of here. For those of you who are in the conspiracy world and you're considering what I'm saying about the church, this is tremendously good news. There is an institution that still stands for truth, that still loves and worships Christ, and yes, it is very infested with people who hate Christ and are trying to use it for their own agenda, but it's still there. And it's a miracle that it's still there, and you can join it, and you go to classes to learn the faith. It's called OCIA, and talk to your fellow prospective converts. I did this. It was wonderful. My friend Friendly in the chat did this as well, and then enter the church, and they do it old school. You know, there's it's done sacramentally, and it's a beautiful thing. And I'm looking forward to finally, it's been a long time coming, joining, entering full communion on Easter, God willing, and being able to finally take part in the sacrament of the Eucharist. And it's still here. It's still here. God would not let Satan to take all of that from us. He came and brought that as a gift for us, and he didn't give that just to let Satan snatch it up for a little while. Satan gets to deceive us. He does not get to deprive us of these sacraments. They're still right there for us to partake in, and they're an absolute blessing. And it's just some of my thoughts on the matter. That's what I'm here doing, slanging thoughts. God bless you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah,